forum than to do it in Syracuse when we're both out here in Wayne County, willing to interact with voters. And actually, the free trade agreement that supposedly shipped jobs to China, that was with Colombia, actually me and some other folks visited Andrew Buerkle's office a couple years ago to talk about our concerns with this free trade agreement. So I think in addition to representatives being accountable to voters, I think it's really important for voters to visit their representatives and take every opportunity that we have to interact with our representatives about the issues that matter to us. So I will not make assumptions about why Dan Maffei is not here. I think we can all draw our own conclusions.
Gary Shaw. Many recent laws have been thousands of pages long and are enacted without most folks reading them. Can we get that changed?
Well, this is a tough question because I haven't had the opportunity yet to be a representative in Congress, and I know that it's very important for anything that you sign to read thoroughly. I think it's the kind of basic common sense thing that your mother teaches you or that you learn in school. You don't sign something that you haven't read. So I can't answer the question fully as to if we can change how laws and bills are written, but I think it's important to have laws that are written in language that people understand. And I think I have this feeling about politics that for too many people it's become a career path and not something that we do because you're called to work for the people and work in the people's interests. And so that's why I think that a lot of folks have a hard time understanding bills and thousands of page laws. And so for one thing that I think is complicated for some people is the tax code. You know, who pays taxes? What are the different loopholes you can get around to not pay taxes? And so I've been in favor, for example, of simplifying the tax code. So rather than many pages long, it's a couple pages long and straightforward that you pay progressive income taxes based on how much you make, not based on how good your accountant is to help you get away from paying taxes that you owe. So I think that Anne Marie might have a better answer on, can we make our bills shorter?
We actually have in the House talked about, and we've introduced legislation that would just have a bill be just on its face, whatever the bill is, rather than having all of this other stuff in there. Now, as you all know, earmarks have been a way of the past. We no longer have earmarks, which is a good thing. But I'll give you a perfect example, the Farm Bill. We need a farm bill in this country. Agriculture is a leading industry in New York State, certainly in this district, certainly in Wayne County. And the Farm Bill has gotten so complicated and so far outside of the realm of the farm industry. It now has all of the food assistance programs in it. So then you get into the very complicated debates and the special interests. And so if we can limit these bills, I think, you know, you're absolutely right, limit these bills and so that we can keep them to a single issue so we understand the unintended consequences. If you look at the Affordable Care Act, we're still unrolling that mess. We're still every day finding new taxes that are in there, new unintended consequences. I mean, that law, 2,300 pages, was, you know, passed, some would say with the best intentions, some would say not with so good intentions. But what we ended up with was a very partisan bill that not one Republican voted for, that ends up, it's so complicated, it's handed off to the regulators, to HHS, and that's what happens with a lot of our legislation, which is another part of that disconnect between Washington and the people, is whether it's Dodd-Frank, whether it's the Affordable Care Act, they're handed off to the regulators where then they interpret and they put their spin on it, and then the regulations continue to stream out into the districts and into the country and how they affect the American people. But you're absolutely right. They need to be simplified, and they need to be one issue in one bill.
And Tiffany? Congressman Buerkle, what have you done in the last 2 years to address the climate change, global warming that threatens millions of lives worldwide? What would you do if elected, Ms. Rozum? You're first, Anne Marie.
Thank you for your question. Well, you know, my position on global warming and climate change has really been misrepresented. In the last campaign, I said that I didn't think legislation should be passed that would significantly impair jobs in the economy and hurt the economy of this country without having good science behind it. And I think it's fair to say, and it's a reasonable position, that climate change and the science of climate change is not decided. And so to put together a whole agenda of rules and regulations that are going to significantly impact the economy of this country, based on, and this is what I said 2 years ago, based on inconclusive scientific evidence. So we just saw recently, this within the last 2 days, evidence coming out from reputable think tanks saying that the temperature of the Earth hasn't risen in the last 16 years. So I think everyone in this room is concerned about the environment, about keeping our, here in Wayne County, Lake Ontario, it's a gem, it's a jewel. We're fighting to keep the government and IJC from ruining that. Everyone understands and really wants to have clean air and clean energy and clean water, but we can't do it at the expense of jobs in the economy. There has to be a reasonable, rational reason for doing some of these things, and when you get this aggressive agenda and it impacts jobs in the economy, then it becomes a problem. And that's where I say we have to step back and we have to look and say, is this reasonable? Do we have enough scientific data to even move in that direction? And that discussion has not taken place. And I will say that that's what's happened with government. It's not become the regulations. If you talk to farmers, just talk to the farmers in Wayne County, what they are up against with the regulations, to the point where many are going to give up their family businesses. That's when I think we've crossed the line as a nation. We need clean water, clean air, but we also need to keep this economy and get this economy going and provide jobs for Americans. We've got 23 million Americans who are not working, and a lot of that is due to the excessive regulations and taxes from the federal government.
Thank you for your question. This is an issue that's very important to me, and I think it's an issue that is directly connected to the issue of jobs in the economy. And myself and Green Party presidential candidate Jill Stein have put forward a plan that we call the Green New Deal, the Climate Action Plan, that's actually focused on job creation in a transition to a clean, renewable energy economy. Many studies have shown that there are many more jobs in the renewable energy economy. For every job that you create in the fossil fuel industry, an equal investment could yield 3 to 4 times as many jobs in the renewable energy economy, because renewable energy is simply much more labor intensive and requires many more people to do the jobs. And I think the only reasonable solution right now is to acknowledge that climate change is a problem, that humans are having an impact, and to start taking actions and steps to reverse the course that we're on. Anne Marie says that there is inconclusive science related to climate change. Well, that simply is not true. There has not been a single peer-reviewed study showing that humans are not having an impact on climate science. So yes, the fossil fuel industry can pay scientists to find the kinds of studies that will encourage them to drill for more oil, to blow up more mountains for coal, and to drill for natural gas like they're trying to do in New York State. So instead of stepping back and letting the fossil fuel industries destroy New York State and destroy the pristine environments of our country, I think we need to move forward with a plan that puts more people to work and that secures our energy independence. We talk about energy independence a lot in this campaign. Anne Marie and Dan Maffei have both used this phrase, energy independence. Well, I think right now we're in a struggle to get our independence back from the large energy corporations that have basically hijacked our energy economy. Companies like Exxon, BP, Chevron, they made record profits in the years 2005 to 2010, yet they cut over 11,000 jobs in the United States. We cannot count on companies that have investors like Chinese capitalists and Middle East sheiks holding the stocks of their companies to work for energy solutions that will benefit us. For true energy independence, we need to be moving forward with job creation in the renewable energy sector. that will make us more secure and that will make our economy much more sustainable. This is one of the key issues that brought me into this race. It's an issue that Dan Maffei has not addressed, and it's an issue on which Anne Marie has issued nothing but false statements.
I do pull these randomly. Tom?
I was online yesterday, and I was reading the UK online news. Well, it was a report. And so my question is, in light of the recent report, and that's the report, that climate warming ceased 10 years ago, and that Antarctic ice is building at unprecedented rates, are you concerned that the world is slipping into a long overdue ice age? I'll direct that to Ursula.
Sure. Well, it is my turn. Thank you. As we know on the internet, we have freedom of speech, and people can say anything they want online. And you haven't even provided a source for who wrote this.
It's the UK. It's the online. What is it? The Times. The UK. Fairness? Okay, fairness. No, it's a reputable. It's a reputable one. It's not a blog.
Well, I'm not sure about this report, and I'm not convinced that this report is actually accurate, because
your question
peer-reviewed scientific studies have shown that ice in the Arctic is melting, and basically what happens is the ice sheet acts as a mirror. It reflects the rays of the sun, and when it melts, water, we all know, absorbs heat, and once it absorbs the heat, it keeps it for a little while. That's why it takes a long time for Lake Ontario to heat up, and then once it does, it stays a little warmer into the fall. So I'm not sure if whatever I say on this question will be satisfactory to you, but that's okay. So I think I already stated my position on climate change and global warming, and I think it's irresponsible, and it's basically just selling off the future of my generation and your kids and your grandkids' future to think that climate change is not happening. I think some people say, oh, well, could humans really have this kind of impact on our weather and on the climate? And we have the science to show that it does. And to think that we can drop 2 atomic bombs on the people of Japan and kill hundreds of thousands of people, humans are capable of quite destructive activities. And we're also just capable of great things. We're generous, we help each other. Our religions encourage us to help our neighbors. So we're capable of good things, and we have the technology to move away from fossil fuels. There was just an energy retrofit done on the Empire State Building that basically is going to be saving about $6 million a year on the energy costs for the Empire State Building. And it's going to pay for itself within the next 3 years. The Empire State Building's huge. We're capable of great things in this country. And so I believe that we need to address the climate crisis with the same urgency that we had when we said we have to go into World War II, or that said we're going to put a man on the moon. We need to unite around this issue. And I have traveled across this district, unlike my opponent, Dan Maffei, and similarly to Anne Marie Buerkle, and I've talked to people that are finally seeing the impacts of the climate crisis firsthand, with the record-breaking drought that we had, with the frost we had in March that's already impacting our local agricultural economy, and that's going to be increasing food prices. So the time for action is now. Now is not the time to be denying the science.
Anne-Marie?
Yikes, I'm not sure where to start. First of all, dropping atomic bombs and equating that to climate change is different. We do in this country need an energy policy. We need to pursue nuclear power, nuclear energy, which is clean, efficient, and safe. We have the resources in this nation to drill for fossil fuel. We have reserves. We have natural gas available to us. We should be drilling onshore. We should be drilling offshore. This country could be self-sustaining when it comes to energy. And we are failing to do that, and it's not just this administration. This goes on for a long time. Establishing a sound energy policy takes some moral fortitude that we really haven't seen in a while. In the House, we have voted to reduce regulation so that more companies are encouraged to drill to get some of the regulatory obstacles out of the way so we can drill, so that we can explore for other energy possibilities. I would say to you that part of that energy policy is wind, is solar power, but to have the government prop up those entities just as with any other energy source is wrong. The playing field should be level, and what the market demands, what the market needs, is what should work well. Now, we put $90 billion from the stimulus into solar panels. And I sat through agonizing hearing after hearing with solar panel companies who went bankrupt as a result because they didn't have a sound. They should not have gotten that money. It was unsustainable. The company structure, they were in financial trouble. The government should have never given them that money. That's a waste of your tax dollars. What the government's got to do with so many of these policies is get out of the way and let the market determine what the American people want, what the American people will use, what will work. Now, there's not a person in this room, and I'll say it again, who doesn't want clean air and clean water and a vibrant economy to hand off to the next generation. That's what moral people do. That's why you're here, because you care so deeply about those issues. But we can't do it to the detriment of who we are as a country. Now, and I know Ursula, and I don't know, is opposed to nuclear energy, opposed to drilling, opposed to fracking. What are we left to use as a country? We are an industrialized nation. And I would say this report that just came out, and I'll make it available to all of you, talks about the fact that the temperature of the Earth has not gone up in the last 16 years. That is about the same time frame that was used to talk about when energies did go up. But over from 1880 until current time, the temperature of the Earth has gone up 0.75 degrees Celsius. So to craft a whole economy and a whole energy policy, it's not that we don't want to protect our Earth, but we've got to do it reasonably. We've got to do it without an agenda-driven program so that we can get to where we need to be without harming and without hurting the economy and jobs. And that's what this election is about getting this country back on course in the economy.
Ed Kinane. Anne Marie, you're first. What do you think about corporations being considered persons?
I think corporations are people. Boards of trustees, and they are people. They are made up of people. And people who have 401ks or people who have retirement plans benefit from corporations doing well. And I'm guessing you're referring to Citizens United and their ability to be able to contribute to campaigns. And I think we see that from both sides. That unions, and there's a lot of entities contributing to Democrats, and there's a lot contributing to me. I will tell you this, and for those of you who know me, the whole process of raising money and all of the emphasis that's put on that when you're in Washington, it is a system really that we should look at and try to, when I first got to Washington my first year, I had three committees and 7 subcommittees. Spent a lot of time in hearings, trying to get my feet under me and trying to figure out, try to do what we were elected to do. And everyone said to me, you got to raise more money, you got to do this, you got to do that. And so I'm just doing my job. I'm doing what I was elected to do. The system really, so many parts of the system needs to be looked at and needs to be changed, because it's the money that is spent, the money supposed to be spent on the presidential election, I think is a concern for everyone.
Ursula?
I'm a person, I think it's funny to hear Anne Marie say that corporations are people. Corporate personhood, I think it's a legal fiction that has allowed corporations to take advantage of things in the Constitution that are intended for real breathing persons. And I'm referring particularly to the idea that money is speech. Because I think that's the problem that we have, is that corporations do have an enormous influence on our political system. And I think the difference is that there are two sides in this political debate this year, but it's not a difference between Democrats and Republicans, because they're both financed by the large corporations that have an interest in how government runs. you look at the different FEC filings for Anne Marie and for Dan Maffei in recent years, and you see a lot of those same large corporations. And I think until we get corporate money out of politics, our representatives will have to pander to the likes of Goldman Sachs and Lockheed Martin and the energy companies like Constellation Energy that are profiting from our reliance on things like nuclear power. And so I think that I would support a constitutional amendment to abolish corporate personhood and to establish public campaign finance so that all ballot qualified candidates have equal access to campaign funds and to the airwaves, so that it's not a race about who can raise the most money. And I think that I do sympathize with folks that have been elected to office and do have to spend time raising money, because it does take away from doing the work of the people. So I think that our representatives need to take a stand and say that we're people. Corporations are not people. It does not say corporations are people in the Constitution. The idea of corporate personhood is a perversion of the 14th Amendment that gave personhood rights to African Americans, and ultimately corporations are not people. They should not have the right to contribute to political campaigns, and we really need to fundamentally address the system. And I do sympathize with the work of having to raise money, but not so much to say that we should give proposals for how can we move away from this system. And I have not heard Anne Marie or Dan Maffei propose anything that would get corporate money out